Jerome David Salinger was born in New York City on New Year's Day 1919. The city was bustling with energy and change, post-war growth and expansion, a fitting backdrop for the arrival of a writer who would one day capture the restless spirit of American youth. Raised on Park Avenue, Salinger grew up in a privileged environment as the son of a successful Jewish cheese importer and a mother of Scots-Irish descent. His family's affluence provided him with opportunities, but also set him apart, instilling in him a sense of being an outsider, an experience that would later echo in his writing. Salinger's early school years were largely unremarkable, marked by frequent transfers and a lack of academic distinction. However, at Valley Forge Military Academy, he found a sense of discipline and solitude. There, after lights out, by flashlight, he read and began writing, nurturing a passion for storytelling that would shape his future. These formative experiences at military school inspired the fictional Pensy Prep in The Catcher in the Rye. The sense of alienation and longing for authenticity the young Salinger felt there would become central to his writing. After a brief and unsatisfying stint at NYU and a failed business trip to Vienna, Salinger returned to New York. He enrolled at Columbia University, where he studied creative writing under the guidance of Whit Burnett. Burnett recognized Salinger's talent and published his first story in 1940, giving him an early taste of literary success and validation. World War II changed Salinger profoundly. He served as a counterintelligence officer in some of the war's most brutal campaigns, including D-Day and the Battle of the Bulge. Throughout the chaos, he carried a typewriter with him, continuing to write even as he witnessed the horrors of combat firsthand. The trauma of war left deep and lasting scars. Salinger was hospitalized for combat stress after the fighting ended, and the psychological impact of his experiences would haunt him for the rest of his life, influencing the darker undertones of his later stories. After returning home, Salinger's stories began appearing in major magazines, earning him a reputation as a rising literary star. He was embraced by The New Yorker, which published many of his Caulfield family stories and helped establish his distinctive voice, wry, sensitive, and deeply observant. In 1951, Salinger published his only novel, The Catcher in the Rye. The book's raw honesty and portrayal of adolescent alienation resonated with readers around the world, quickly becoming a classic of American literature. The novel's runaway success brought Salinger a level of fame he found unbearable. Suddenly, he was thrust into the public eye, pursued by reporters and fans eager to uncover the man behind the bestseller. Salinger became increasingly uncomfortable with public attention. The glare of fame clashed with his intensely private nature, and he began to withdraw from interviews, public appearances, and the literary scene. This discomfort would define the rest of his life. Seeking peace and solitude, Salinger retreated to rural New Hampshire and lived in near seclusion, far from the demands of the literary world. Despite his withdrawal, Salinger never stopped writing. He continued to work on new stories and manuscripts, but rarely published again, choosing instead to protect his creative process from outside scrutiny. Salinger's legacy is that of a brilliant, enigmatic writer who fiercely protected his privacy. The Catcher in the Rye had at first been serialized in magazines, but was finally published as a novel in 1951. It didn't just introduce a new style of story to the world. It marked the arrival of a literary force. The book's raw honesty and unique voice set it apart from anything readers had encountered before. The novel's popularity grew steadily, especially among young readers drawn to protagonist Holden Caulfield's authentic, rebellious voice. For many, Holden became a symbol of adolescent angst and the struggle to find one's place in a confusing world. The book resonated deeply with teenagers who saw themselves reflected in Holden's cynicism and vulnerability. Salinger poured his own experiences of alienation and disillusionment into Holden, making the novel deeply personal. The character's struggles mirrored Salinger's own discomfort with society and fame, giving the story an authenticity that captivated readers. Fiercely protective of his creation, Salinger refused all offers to adapt the book for film or stage, believing any adaptation would corrupt its essence. He saw Holden as more than a character. He was a part of himself, and he guarded that connection with unwavering resolve. Salinger's resistance to interpretation and adaptation became legendary, fueling speculation and fascination. The more he resisted, the more the public wanted to know about the man behind the novel. The novel's fame brought intense scrutiny and unwanted attention. Reporters and fans alike clamored for a glimpse of the reclusive author, turning his life into a spectacle he never wanted. Readers projected their feelings onto Salinger, seeking him out and writing letters by the thousands. Many hoped for advice, connection, or simply a response from the man who seemed to understand them so well. But Salinger saw this as a violation of his privacy, not a reward. The attention felt suffocating, and he recoiled from the very audience that adored him. He published his last original work in 1965, then vanished from the literary scene. The silence that followed only fueled his legend, leaving fans and critics wondering what he was working on. Salinger wrote on in isolation, refusing to publish. Rumors swirled about unpublished manuscripts and secret stories, but he kept silent, content to create for himself only. The Catcher in the Rye gave him the world's attention, but all he wanted was to be left alone. The paradox of his fame was that it made both Salinger and his work into cultural icons, yet drove him ever further into solitude. His bond with Holden Caulfield defined his career and his reclusive existence. The novel's enduring appeal is interwoven with the mystery of its creator. Today, The Catcher in the Rye legacy remains inseparable from the man who created and then hid from it. Salinger's story is a testament to the power of literature, but also to the price of creating something truly unforgettable. In 1953, following his masterwork's success, Salinger vanished into Cornish, New Hampshire, where he wrote daily in a secluded studio and explored spiritual practices like Zen Buddhism and Vedanta Hinduism. He kept interactions with locals minimal, fiercely guarding his privacy. Salinger even sued to block publication of a biography quoting his personal letters. But the more he withdrew, the more public fascination grew. Journalists and fans made pilgrimages to Cornish, but rarely saw him. His silence became as famous as his words. The Catcher in the Rye follows 16-year-old Holden Caulfield over a few chaotic, life-changing days one December. The story is told entirely from Holden's perspective, immersing us in his restless mind as he wanders through New York City, searching for meaning and connection in a world he finds fake and overwhelming. After being expelled from Pensy Prep for failing most of his classes, Holden gets into a heated argument with his roommate, Stradlater. Feeling misunderstood and rejected, he decides to leave school early, before his parents find out. Alone and adrift, Holden heads to New York City, checking into a rundown hotel. He spends his nights wandering the city, drifting from nightclubs to bars, and trying to connect with strangers, bartenders, cab drivers, and even old acquaintances, hoping to find someone who understands him. A failed encounter with a prostitute leaves him feeling even more alienated, and a disastrous date with his old friend Sally Hayes only deepens his sense of loneliness and frustration. Every attempt at intimacy seems to push him further away from the real world. Holden's efforts to have meaningful conversations falter, leaving him isolated and desperate for genuine human connection. He calls old friends and even strangers, but no one seems to truly listen or care. In a moment of vulnerability, he sneaks home to see his beloved younger sister, Phoebe. Their late-night conversation is one of the few moments of real warmth in the novel, as Holden confides his fantasy of being the catcher in the rye, someone who saves children from losing their innocence. After a tense escape from his parents, who are unaware of his expulsion, Holden seeks refuge with his former English teacher, Mr. Antolini. But when he feels uncomfortable and threatened, he flees once again, unable to find a safe place to rest. The novel's climax comes as Holden watches Phoebe ride a carousel in Central Park. For a brief moment, he experiences a sense of peace and happiness, realizing that he cannot protect everyone from growing up, but he can, at least, still love and cherish his sister. The story is a journey through alienation, grief, and the desperate search for authenticity in a world that often feels cold and indifferent. Holden's struggles reflect the universal pain of growing up and the longing to find one's place. His narrative is raw, honest, and deeply personal, filled with moments of humor, anger, and vulnerability. His voice draws readers into his world, making his pain and confusion seem real and immediate. The novel's emotional core is his relationship with Phoebe, whose innocence and kindness offer Holden a glimmer of hope and redemption. Holden's longing to protect innocence, his own and others, defines his struggle and gives the story its enduring power. The book closes with a sense of hope, but no easy answers. Holden's journey is unfinished, leaving us to wonder what comes next for him, and for all of us searching for meaning in a complex world. The Catcher in the Rye focuses on a powerful universal theme, that painful transition from childhood innocence to adult corruption. Holden Caulfield is obsessed with authenticity, labeling adults as phonies. He idealizes childhood, especially as personified by his sister Phoebe and his late brother Allie. Holden's grief over Allie fuels his desire to shield others from disappointment. Alienation and loneliness drive Holden's journey. He craves connection but sabotages himself. His struggle is a poignant portrait of adolescent turmoil. The novel explores identity's contradictions. Holden condemns phoniness but often lies himself. He yearns for truth but acts impulsively. Salinger offers no easy answers, only a raw depiction of the mayhem of growing up. Holden's story resonates with the human condition's perpetual search for meaning and belonging. The title, The Catcher in the Rye, soundly identifies the novel's central motif. Holden dreams of saving children from falling off a cliff while playing in a rye field, a metaphor for preserving innocence. The field represents childhood, the cliff, the dangers of adulthood. Holden's fantasy is noble but impossible. He cannot stop time or protect anyone. Even his name, Holden Caulfield, hints at his role as a guardian of innocence. Hold them, then a reference to a field, where one might find that metaphorical rye. The novel's end brings a shift. Watching Phoebe reach for the carousel's gold ring, Holden realizes he can't protect her from every risk. He learns that growing up means letting go. The symbolism is subtle but powerful. Salinger uses names and images to reinforce Holden's struggle. The gold ring scene marks Holden's first step toward maturity, as he finally accepts that children must take risks to grow. Ultimately, Holden's quest is to learn acceptance. The Catcher in the Rye itself had weathered a rocky road to publication. Salinger had developed Holden Caulfield over a decade, but serialized excerpts featuring this flagship character were rejected by the New Yorker magazine and publisher Harcourt Brace. Editors questioned Holden's mental state and the novel's unconventional style. Finally, Little, Brown and Company of New York City published it as a novel in July 1951. Critics were divided. Some hailed its originality, others dismissed it as crude and immature. The book's frank language and troubled hero unsettled many. But despite mixed reviews, young readers embraced the novel. As it turned out, its authentic voice and raw emotion resonated with an entire post-war generation. The Catcher in the Rye quickly became a word-of-mouth success, the author's honesty and daring provoking comparisons with Mark Twain's most socially confronting stories. Its impact grew far beyond initial expectations, and ultimately critics and scholars alike conceded that Salinger's unique voice had literally changed American fiction. However, The Catcher in the Rye also sparked controversy from the start, especially in schools. Its language, sexual themes, and anti-authority stance led to frequent bans. Critics called it a corrupting influence. Supporters saw it as essential for discussing identity and alienation. The debate was about more than profanity. It was about literature's role in education. Over time, The Catcher's controversies only increased its appeal to teens, and the book's power to provoke useful debates actually helped it endure, despite its opponents' zeal. In one particularly laughable and now notorious 1978 attack, Issaquah, Washington High School's board members claimed the book was part of an overall communist plot. However, despite several waves of bans, burnings, and shreddings, the novel eventually became a respected high school staple and continues to be studied widely around the world to this day. But tragically, The Catcher in the Rye has also been linked to several infamous crimes, most notably John Lennon's murder in New York City in 1980. Lennon's killer, Mark David Chapman, so identified with Holden Caulfield that he was found reading The Catcher in the Rye at the crime scene. He also read aloud from the novel's closing before being sentenced to 20 years to life. As of early 2025, despite many parole reviews, he was still in jail. Further investigations revealed that Chapman had also considered murdering David Bowie, a friend of Lennon's who had, ironically, co-written his hit song Fame with the slain former Beatle. The Catcher in the Rye was also found among the possessions of John Hinckley Jr., an insane man who had become obsessed with 70s child actor Jodie Foster, stalked her, and was later captured by the Secret Service while attempting to assassinate U.S. President Ronald Reagan. He was released after decades of psychiatric confinement. In July 2024, following the attempted assassination of Donald Trump, he tweeted, "Violence is not the way to go. Give peace a chance." These two disturbing cases triggered debates about the novel's influence on troubled minds. Some argued Holden's alienation was too easily misread by those with mental health issues. However, there's no evidence that the book either celebrates or otherwise incites violence. Millions have read it without harm. Its association with these two homicidal personalities is clearly a dark sidebar, not the novel's essence. It's fiction, not a manifesto. Decades later, Salinger's masterpiece still holds its place as a cornerstone of modern American literature. Its revolutionary narrative voice changed fiction, capturing adolescent angst as never before. Holden Caulfield became the archetype for alienated youth, and Salinger the role model for waves of realist authors writing young adult literature. Despite his personal struggles and fragility, Salinger actually lived a long life. He was married 3 times, fathered 2 children, and died peacefully at home in New Hampshire at the age of 91. His flagship novel's critique of phoniness long ago entered the Western cultural lexicon, and Catcher's emotional core, loss, change, and the search for connection, remains universal, as each generation finds itself in Holden's struggles. Salinger presented Holden with compassion and empathy, not judgment, and that final image of Phoebe on the carousel was clearly designed to offer hope. Thus, the novel's humanity has secured its place as a true classic, both challenging and comforting readers of all ages and across many cultures. Have you read it? Can you relate at whatever age to Holden Caulfield? Please tell us in the comments section. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to help keep world literature alive.
It's fascinating to contrast the truth-telling and taboo subjects in the most famous young adult American literature of the 19th century, with Salinger's high-impact material. Consider his forerunner in episode 34,